This week I had the privilege of interviewing Pete Greasley to gain a pastor's perspective on church administration. Pete's been working in pastoral ministry for the last 35 years, and it was great to hear from him what he thinks about church administration. Now I've split this down into 3 different videos, so please take the time to check them all out. It's also available on podcast as well. So look to the website, thechurchoffice.co.uk, and you'll find a whole range of other resources as well. Thank you for watching today. Pete, one of the things that I want to chat to you a bit about is kind of elders and deacons working together. And often you see structures in Welsh churches where you've got a group of, you've got a single pastor maybe, a group of lay elders and a group of lay deacons. Yeah. And often how they all work together is sometimes quite challenging. I've met deacons who are like, this is my department, we control the finances, we control the operations, and it's kind of, the working relationship seems to break down a bit, and then you've got elders who don't recognise what gifting there is in the deacon. So all of those different dynamics are going on, and I'm sure you've come across and met other pastors that are in those sort of situations. So how could you speak into that, and how does this apply?
This is a massive question.
Yeah, podcast on its own.
This is a lot of podcasts. Yeah, because imagine the situation. Most men who are in pastoral ministry have probably been called by the elders and deacons of that church. Yeah, they have been assessed by the elders and deacons. That's not wrong. Yeah, and they feel beholden to them. Mm-hmm. And the elders and deacons almost can see them as their employee.
Yes, yeah, that is true.
So the ability for that man to lead can be at times, because of the desire for checks and balances, and this is the way we do things here, and this is the way you should continue here. That can be the death knell for many churches, because you either have a man who can't cope, and just leaves, and they could have a large turnover of pastoral ministry, or not get anyone at all, or you have elders and deacons who walk away from the church saying it's not what it used to be. Yeah. So I would encourage elders and deacons, and there are differences. Firstly, when you call a man, give him the biblical room to be able to lead effectively. And if you were to go down the road we're talking about, so say a man's been called into pastoral ministry, he's been there 2 years, he's got a team of deacons, Mrs. Goggins does the finances, somebody else does this. They've been doing it for years, and that's what I'm the finance secretary, I'm the treasurer, I'm the whatever, children's ministry oversight. And I'm talking about bringing someone in who is essentially takes an authority to be able to determine the way that's done, takes an authority and is given an authority to be able to determine who does what and how, then you're naturally going to potentially run up against people who have said, you're wrecking this church, and this is not what we wanted when we called you. We just want you to get up and preach. We want you to run the children's ministry. We want you to run the youth's ministry. We want you to care for people. We want you to visit people, and then we'll pay you for that job. Yeah. I would say if a man goes to a church and that's their mentality, I would try and talk to them beforehand, saying I wouldn't come in that way. No. And I think it requires some courage. Yeah. To be able to say, I'll come, but you must give me room. Yeah. But you must also give me room to allow somebody else to come and have room, potentially to change your role. Yes. So it comes down to the fundamental issue of, if these people love the gospel and love this church and recognize the gift of God in this man and recognize the gift of God in others, they will be willing to say, whatever works best, how can we serve? Now, it doesn't mean that they come out of any system of checks and balances. We need that. So here we've got a large team of trustees who in some ways are our bosses. But they give us room. And then we have an eldership that is both paid for. We've got full-time elders. We've got people that are on eldership that are lay elders. We have deacons that are full-time as well as part-time. And we have people serving in all different kinds of ministries. But what you can't have, you can't have the people in the ship telling the guy on the rudder
Yeah.
which way he's got to take it.
Yeah.
There's got to be some room. So I think that will be a challenge for a lot of churches that well, we spread this work out and it becomes very possessive.
Yeah.
This is my thing. This is what I do, and don't you touch it.
Yeah.
You have to go to the heart there.
Yeah.
And you have to say, well, come on, let's have a chat.
Yeah.
And let's talk about why this is so important to you and why you find your sense of identity and security and purpose in this role and not in Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah, absolutely right.
But that's where leadership comes in.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what it does take, doesn't it? There is it isn't, you don't just want to go into a context and just do the preaching and teaching and the caring and not be able to lead in a way that's, across all these different areas. And it does require a lot of change, doesn't it? And as you apply the gospel, that's the best way to see change, isn't it?
It does. So, I mean, we're called to do everything gently, with patience. So I'm not saying in any way a guy comes in, takes on another administrator and says to everybody who's been serving there for the last 20 or 30 years possibly, tough, you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just weak, foolish leadership.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What you do is you gently, graciously do what you're called to do, which is teach and appeal and explain and reveal. Listen, let's sit at the foot of the cross and look at who we love and follow and learn from him. Yeah. And in light of all we've received, and in light of all that we are in Christ, let's put things into perspective and see what matters. Yeah. So it does require courage, and whoever you take on into that role, if you do, has to be courageous. Gentle, but courageous, has to be able at times to say to people, no, or I don't believe so, and not be so terrified of the outcome that they are just incapacitated. It's taking the right people and doing the right things, and at times, so long as it's done with grace and gentleness and kindness and understanding and time, you can make some changes. But some men just don't want to do that, and if you're not prepared to do that, you can't take on someone to do their dirty work for you. You've got to do it yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I think if you're a deacon in this role and in this process, there's got to be humility, isn't there? And you've got to be able to recognise the gifting and give room to the person. So we don't want to hold the purse strings and not make the job easy. We've got to, as deacons, get behind the elders and what they're trying to do, and we want to make them successful. And we want them to be effective in their role. So we've got to do that supporting role. So release the things.
If a church to go forward and looks into kind of management administration role, it does in some ways remove that authority from others that have had it, as we're saying. There has to be a willingness to be able to do that. Yeah. It's always a challenge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it is possible to do this. I've talked to, for instance, I've talked to guys who, not only the deacons, but the whole church, they can't spend more than a few £100 on anything without it going to the church for a vote.
Some sort of approval,
I'm not sure how I could work in that. Yeah. So our trustees, who have the complete authority, would determine, they could say, well, you can spend, we trust you, anything up to this amount, without having to come back to us at all. Yeah. Because we're here to facilitate you and your ministry. Yeah. So I think everybody needs to recognize where their gifts lie, where their limitations lie, where their authority should be utilized and where it should be restrained, and find a way to work together. So this will mean change for some churches. If they were to take on someone in an administrative management role, it will mean change, and it will require courage and gentle explanation, and you have to get people on board with the vision to be able to move forward in that.
Well, that concludes our video and the interview that I did with Pete. Again, please check out the website at www.thechurchoffice.co.uk.